Welcome to another episode of The Exchange by Evolution. I am Roseanne, your host for today, and I have Bryan with me from CIX. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Bryan. I'm a commercial director at Climate Impact X. So what my role is at CIX is helping to work with organizations that have carbon credits and helping them come to market and sell those to get finance to help implement activities to combat climate change.
Okay, and I guess today the topic that we're going to discuss about will be more on the green transition, right?
Absolutely.
So what is the green transition?
So the green transition is a sort of economy, but really society-wide effort to make our world more sustainable. So if you imagine, we spent most of human history farming.
Yeah.
You know, my ancestors from Ukraine out in the bush, and then we spent the last 200 years burning fossil fuel. So if you imagine cars and airplanes and the electricity that comes out of the lights, all of that is powered by fossil fuels. And we spent 200 years running our economy that way, and we need to spend the next 30 years stopping that. And so what the green transition is every single part of our lives, how we use technology, how to interact with each other, how we travel, how we communicate, all of that needs to become sustainable and green in order to keep global warming to well under 2 degrees.
And reducing fossil fuels in our day-to-day to all the way to like businesses, how we're going to do it, right? Exactly. So I guess a lot of people haven't heard of CIX. I mean, it's not a really big brand now, I guess because people don't know what the sustainability industry, or rather they're not. Nobody has ever spoke about it as much as we wish they would. I mean, especially in Singapore. Yeah. I'm not sure about overseas, but I mean, in Germany and China, I know it's big. Europe probably. UK a little bit, not so much, but in Singapore it's definitely something that people feel like it's more mandatory than voluntary. Yeah. So actually, I think the main thing is that what I want to understand more about what CIX can do for Singapore, and what is carbon credit?
That's a great question. So what a carbon credit is it is a thing, call it a financial asset that represents 1 ton of emissions that have been avoided or that have been removed from the atmosphere. And so the idea is that if you imagine a scenario where there is a piece of land that might be open for a palm oil concession, what you and I could do is we could buy up that piece of land and buy up that concession, and instead of cutting down the rainforest and sending all of that carbon into the atmosphere, we could protect it.
Right.
But the thing is that we can't do that for free, because if you cut down all the trees and you plant palm oil, create a palm oil plantation, then you get a lot of money. And so what you need is funding and ultimately money to be able to counterbalance that economic incentive toward, in this case, deforestation, and instead have an economic incentive for sustainability. And so what a carbon credit is if you take that piece of land, say it's 100,000 hectares, you could figure out the amount of emissions that would have happened by cutting all those trees down, and get carbon credits in return. And you could sell those carbon credits to companies that are looking to become more sustainable, and then in doing so, help to pay for the work that you're doing to conserve that land. And what's really exciting is that the example I gave, that's for protecting forests. But what the voluntary carbon market is able to do is that same idea of reducing emissions, you can expand it to pretty well any kind of activity. And this is really where this becomes very, very exciting for the green transition. It's instead of having to wait for government regulation, instead of having to wait for new mandates, the market is able to do what the market does best and channel finance to these kinds of much needed activities that need some funding to get off the ground to reduce global emissions.
I understand. I mean, there are a lot of different standards now, right? So what makes you think that this standard is better than the other, or how do we qualify all these standards and make sure that carbon credit means something? I mean, I think the problem that maybe the issue that people talk about nowadays about carbon credits is that it's too cheap. So people actually buy off, and then it's very easy to just not reduce the carbon emission, but just use your carbon offset.
Yeah, those are two very good questions. So to the second part of your question is carbon credits should absolutely be a complement as a part of a much broader corporate sustainability strategy. So if you're a big company, what you should absolutely focus on first is setting a long-term target to reduce your emissions and then start actually reducing those emissions. But what's important to think about is that that's going to take 30 years. I mean, if you imagine a company that, for example, runs hotels, they get there, they turn their lights on, the power comes from the grid. They don't control the grid. They don't control the natural gas power plant or the coal power plant 20 miles down the road. So rather than wait for this economy-wide transition to happen, they can go above and beyond what they're doing otherwise and help support global emissions somewhere else. And so this is particularly true for somewhere like Singapore, where Singapore is a relatively small, it's a small country. It doesn't have that much control over emissions, but its neighbors, whether that's its neighbors in the regions that have these extraordinarily rich areas of whether it's rainforest, whether it's other types of systems, we can help protect these and go above and beyond what we're able to do here in Singapore to help, in this case, protect forests throughout Southeast Asia. And then the first part of it, and so that's what that's called is the idea of the mitigation hierarchy, or first reduce internally, but then when you're on, while you're making those internal reductions, go above and beyond what you can do yourself to help the world as a whole reduce its emissions. And what carbon credits enable companies to do is to make that action very, very easy.
Right, but how do we convince the skeptics of doing this? You know, sometimes these things come from like passion, right? So then how do we convince them to, you know, voluntarily go above and beyond? Because I think above and beyond to a lot of people, it's extra effort, extra work. Why would they do it, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think when you began this question, you talked a bit about how this is more prevalent, more popular in the US, Europe, and in the UK. And in that case, what I think companies should think about is who of their stakeholders is this important to? And so, for example, if you're a company that sells, you know, products to individuals, consumers care. Consumers really, really care about the companies that they, particularly the younger generation, the products that they buy and the companies that they buy stuff from. They want them to be sustainable, and having some target that's going to happen at some point 30 years from now, that isn't good enough anymore. And what these companies are able to do is, again, they're limited in what they can do internally. And so what carbon credits are able to let them do is really communicate and have that impact and showcase that they want to be, that they're doing everything that they can, and they're using all the tools that are available to become more sustainable in a way that matters to, maybe it's their consumers, maybe it's their employees, maybe it's for, you know, new recruits, maybe it's the kind of talent that they're trying to attract into the company. Maybe it's their board, maybe it's their shareholders. There's lots of different audiences that they can use carbon credits to help contribute and take meaningful action. So what companies should really do is, as they think about setting these long-term targets and doing these sort of very tactical things, is just to think carefully about who do you want to speak to? Who does this matter to? And how can you use carbon credits to help communicate and have an impact with those audiences?
Okay, and I guess speaking of which, right, to my next point is what makes a person a good candidate for, I guess, this industry. It's not a very popular thing that, you know, everyone has multiple years of experience in. So then what is a good candidate?
Yeah, actually, we're hiring interns right now, so a lot of them are pretty excited. Yeah, that's a great question. So there's really a few things that I would think about. So my personal background is how I found myself working in carbon markets. Was I started my career for a big management consulting firm. So working with banks, working to actually stress test banks, which is a funny thing to have worked on given what's in the news today. And then, so after that, it transitions into working more in international development. So I used to live in Nairobi. I used to work in smallholder agriculture. And so what, for someone who's looking to get into the market, what carbon markets really provides as a career opportunity is mixing both of those worlds, where it's somebody that comes from a business background, whether that's consulting, whether that's finance, whether that's marketing, is taking those same skills but applying them in a way to have an impact in the world. So part of that is I think from a personal standpoint, it's a way to be in my case, a very, very, very small part of this broader work that all of us need to do with the green transition. But it also provides a chance to do something that's really cool. Like rainforests are really cool. Clean cooking stoves are really, really cool. I had a call with the guy a couple of weeks ago it is an Australian cotton processing company. So they go and they buy cotton from all kinds of farmers and they process it and then sell it to companies that make clothes. And so apparently, this is what I learned on this phone call. When you process cotton, there's all kinds of twigs and sticks and stuff that get caught up when you harvest it. You can make carbon credits out of those, because instead of just burning it out back, which is what they do ordinarily, what you can do is you can convert that into what's called biochar. It's sort of a fertilizer. And then instead of burning it, in which case all of those emissions go into the atmosphere, you can use it as fertilizer in a way that then stores the carbon in the soil for hundreds of years. And they can pay for that.
Back to the earth.
Exactly.
That's great.
So from there, for them, it makes, for them to build the machines to make this kind of fertilizer costs a lot of money, which they can then pay for with carbon credits. But it also provides a much needed climate tool that's, and I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but if you imagine both of us are wearing cotton right now, I would imagine there's a lot of cotton grown in the world. And so if every company or lots of companies were able to now do this, that can make a bit of an impact.
I think that can make a lot of impact.
So I think from the why carbon credits matter is it can provide the money to make this economically worthwhile. But I think from if the question is why should you work in carbon credits, that's really fun to think about. That's a fantastic 30-minute conversation to have with an engineer for an Australian cotton producing company. And that's just one of many examples of the different opportunities that are available. And so if you're somebody that's coming from a finance background or any number of companies that are in very well established industries, all of a sudden as you get to be at the forefront of something where every day you're able to have a conversation about and think critically about what are the different opportunities and what needs money and what needs finance to help combat climate change, and how can we as CIX help contribute to and support those different initiatives. Right.
And okay, so then to our next point again, I mean, CIX was here, and then I think they have two products prior to the exchange that is currently doing in the build phase or something like that. So just, would you mind sharing a little bit more about the first two products, and then maybe how you are, how it will make the change?
Yeah, absolutely. So Climate CIX was launched out of the Emerging Stronger Together Task Force, EST, during the pandemic. And so what the goal was as Singapore emerged from the pandemic, because they wanted to emerge stronger together and really position themselves to participate in the green and sustainable economy. And so Singapore as a finance hub, carbon markets make sense as a way for Singapore to help grow and scale the carbon markets in East Asia, but also around the world. And so CIX was born out of that initiative. So our four shareholders are Temasek, the Singapore Exchange, Standard Chartered Bank, and DBS Bank. And they all came together to start CIX with the goal of helping to scale the market, but also to help. And then the key way of scaling the market is to help create trust. And so what we really do is we are a platforms company with the goal of bringing together buyers and sellers. Because if you, for example, are an expert in planting trees and working with local communities and helping to protect forests, it doesn't necessarily follow that you're also great at negotiating multi-million-dollar carbon credit sales agreements with big energy companies. I mean, those are two different skill sets. And so what we're able to do is help to bring buyers and sellers together in a streamlined way where both of them are able to get a fair price and are able to transact their credits, and that we're able to grow trust in the market overall. And so the three platforms that we run for these types of, to bring buyers and sellers together, one is a project marketplace. So this is an e-commerce platform that provides for companies that are new to the market that are looking to explore. I think the question that you asked earlier about why should companies do this? One of the questions is, well, what is a carbon credit? What is this stuff that's happening? And it can be intimidating. And so what the project marketplace is able to do is provide companies some insight into what these credits are, what are the individual projects, what is the impact that they're having, how is this helping local communities, how is this helping biodiversity, people love orangutans, and all of the credits that we list on the marketplace, we do a first cut of quality to provide. So we're not just listing everything, but it's really the types of projects that are able to have real impact, again, with the goal of creating trust. So that's a project marketplace, and it's really for these companies that are just starting out, that are just looking.
Also, they will put up the projects onto your platform.
For companies that are buying. And then for suppliers is exactly. So it's a e-commerce platform. They're able to put some projects up, list their credits, they set their prices, and they're able to sell them. And so for the different organizations that are working on the ground and working in these communities, is for them, it's just another channel to bring their credits and make them available to different buyers and be able to get more financing to help run their activities.
And free marketing.
So that's the marketplace. The second platform that we have is a auction. And so one of the characteristics of carbon markets is that it's new. And nobody knows what the price of a carbon credit is. And so what I find very interesting is, as different people with different backgrounds come to the market, is they bring their experience to carbon markets to think about what analogies can be brought. So if you imagine some established commodities like gold or iron, you can just look up the price of gold.
Exactly, there's like a benchmark.
There's a benchmark, exactly, and there are many indices, and there's different grades of gold, but there's a very, very well established way of understanding what the price of gold is. That doesn't exist in carbon credits. So one of my internships in university was working for a candy bar company.
Candy bar.
So different kinds of chocolate bars. So carbon credits every product is different. And there can be some standardization that'll come to in a minute. But for new types of projects, really the best way to figure out what the price of something new is you get a bunch of people in a room and you say, what are you going to pay for it? And that's what the auction does, is it really provides that very clear, very transparent way of identifying, instead of identifying the value and identifying the market willingness to pay for these types of credits. And then what's really, really exciting is that because so many of these things it's the first time that someone is doing this. Other people are waiting and seeing, well, is that gonna work? And so the most recent auction that we ran was last November for what's called a mangrove restoration project. So mangroves are trees that grow in water. Planting trees is hard. Planting trees in 2 feet of water is very hard. And so the auction that we ran was with the world's largest mangrove restoration project in southern Pakistan. So it's 40,000 hectares of land that they're restoring. And so that's hundreds of thousands of trees that they've been able to work on for the last several years and have a lot of success with. And so for lots of other people that are looking to try to do something the same, they need to know what the prices that they're going to get. And so the auction that we ran was very, very successful. So there were 250,000 credits that were auctioned, and each credit is 1 ton of emissions. So that's 250,000 tons of emissions, with over 300,000 tons of demand, with a very, very good claim price. And that price was then set through this transparent way. And we were able to make public, and as a part of the announcements, discuss how we came to the price, how the auction worked. So now other people that are looking to make that same investments, in particular in Southeast Asia, because lots of places that you want to plant mangroves, a lot of that land that is suitable is in Southeast Asia. Now they can make those investments. Now they know what the price of this thing is.
But how can they guarantee?
How could they guarantee it before? I think that's so what we can't necessarily guarantee a price. If you're looking to the gold example, if you're looking to build a gold mine, you look and you can see other similar mines, other similar types of gold, and you can have a number for that investment. And now we're able to bring the same to the auction,
Right.
given how unique so many of these projects are. What we're able to do is bring something similar to different kinds of carbon projects.
And how often are these like auctions actually?
Once every couple of months. Yeah,
okay.
so it's we're experimenting and expanding the model because again, there's lots of different types of projects that are available, but the goal is to run one every couple of months.
Yeah, so that at least you have an average of all the different like
exactly,
prices,
and it's different projects, different types of credits, different regions, to really have these different price markers and different opportunities to scale the market in different ways.
Is it open to public or?
The platforms are open to onboarded buyers. So the target is companies that are participating in the market. And so for each one of them to participate, there's a few different venues that participate, but it's really for companies as opposed to individuals.
Right. Okay, I understand. I mean, if individuals were to join, I mean, they'll be on like invitation basis, right? Okay, makes sense. There's some like exclusivity there.
It's really for companies.
Okay.
So we haven't. I think we've had a couple of conversations about possibly having a consumer option.
Right.
We're not doing that at the moment.
Okay. I mean, makes sense because you still need to reach out to like it's more of a B2B business.
Yeah, B2B and B2C are quite different.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then comes to like the third product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
And this is the exchange. So this is what we're really, really excited about. So the first two platforms, those are both up and running.
Yeah.
So the marketplace launched marketplace and auction launched late 2021 into 2022, whereas the exchange is the third one. So what this is really designed for are big companies, big traders, the people that are doing bids, offers. So it's much more similar to a bond market, equity market. And we've partnered with NASDAQ to use their technology to run what's called their trade matching software. So when there's a bid and there's an offer, those two things need to come together. So we use NASDAQ technology to do that sort of matching. And what we're really excited about for the exchange is there's no big carbon exchange yet in East Asia. There's a few new ones, but I think they're still we're still exploring. And as you mentioned earlier, the space is still growing. So what we're really excited about is using the exchange to continue to position Singapore at the heart of carbon trading in East Asia, and more importantly, to be able to start to create some of those benchmark prices that, as you mentioned, exist in other industries. So as we launch the exchange, it's also launching with what's called a standardized contract. So it's a basket of a number of different projects. The goal being that if you ask me the question, what was the price of a carbon credit yesterday? I'm able to look at the trading activity that happened in this basket and then say, well, I think that basket represents the average carbon credit or the average of a certain type of carbon credit. And I believe in how that basket was developed, and I believe in that price. So now all of a sudden, if I'm going to go and sell you credits 2 years from now, I can sell credits that are, instead of just us making up $15, making up a price, the data is there for us to be able to do that. Or if I'm looking to go and buy that piece of land to try to help protect it and generate these credits for the next 30 years or 50 years, now all of a sudden I have a much better idea of the funding that I can get in the future to be able to make those investment decisions today.
Sense. That's interesting. I mean, so this would be kind of like the benchmark for mangrove reservation carbon credit.
Specifically, nature-based projects. So that would include
nature-based. So it doesn't matter if it's the tree in the water or the tree on land.
Exactly. So it's quite broad. And then as we grow and continue to scale the exchange, the goal is to launch additional benchmarks for other types of projects. There aren't a lot of these kinds of mangrove restoration projects. So having a benchmark, there's not a lot of it out there. So having a benchmark is a bit more difficult. Which is where the auction comes in and why it's so helpful. Is for these kinds of new, unique types of projects, you can have an individual auction. Whereas for more established type projects, so like the tree protection ones, there's enough credits that are out there and enough projects that are out there that you can structure these kinds of benchmarks.
Right. I guess, but also one question I'm quite curious about, right? Personally, I think, yes, you can reduce a lot of carbon emission, but how about those that you produce?
Absolutely.
So how does that work? I mean, can you build more machines on like, okay, let's say the one on the ocean? I don't know what's that.
Yeah, the ocean one's a good
What's it
one.
called? Yeah.
There's a few different ocean ones.
Yeah.
My favorite is there's an organization out of the eastern U.S. So what they do is they put buoys,
Yes,
depending how you say that word. They put them far out to sea,
Yeah.
and then they grow algae and seaweed on this
Uh-huh.
buoy. So you got the buoy floating there, and it's
Oh.
biodegradable, and then you got algae, the sort of big thing of algae sticking out the bottom.
Yeah.
And then eventually, so this thing grows, and then as it grows, it sequesters carbon. And then at a certain point, the idea is that the buoy breaks down, and then the whole thing sinks to the bottom of the ocean,
Okay.
and then it's stored there forever. So all of the carbon as that algae and seaweed grows, it sequesters carbon, so it takes it out of the atmosphere,
Mhm, mhm.
and then as it sinks to the bottom of the sea, it just merges into the seafloor.
And then it takes away from the sea, is it?
Exactly. So it stores it forever, because the two main types of credits are avoidance credits or reduction credits.
Yeah.
So credits that are from reducing emissions, or removal credits.
Yeah.
So credits that are from removing carbon from the atmosphere. So there's lots of different ways to remove carbon from the atmosphere, but the big question is, how do you store it permanently?
Right.
So if you and I planted a tree, or planted a whole bunch of trees, those would grow over time. They would take carbon out of the atmosphere. Trees can burn down.
Yeah. And it's not like forever.
It's not forever. So a lot of the new experimental technology, it's really solving both of those things.
Right.
One is removing, but the other one is storing permanently. And so the phrase that they use is geologic storage,
Geological storage.
which effectively means turning it to rock somehow.
Right.
So for the seaweed example, because it falls to the bottom of the sea, it'll just stay there, and over the course of thousands of years turn into limestone or sedimentary rock. Whereas for if you're storing it in a tree, that kind of long-term storage doesn't necessarily happen. And so a lot of these new sort of frontier technologies run the gamut or removals technologies really run the gamut from sort of what's called afforestation, reforestation, tree planting, restoring forests, all the way through to the guys out in Switzerland that have these great big machines that are sucking this stuff out of the atmosphere, and everything in between.
Right.
There's lots of different ways to look at what happens in nature, accelerate natural systems to help both sequester carbon and store it. But all of these are new technologies, and that's what I think the dual mandate of carbon markets really is one is reducing this stuff as fast as we can. We lose an area the size of Austria of rainforest every year.
Yeah.
So we absolutely need to reduce those emissions as much as we can. And deforestation is
Like, so at least net.
Yeah, because that's the
Loss.
exactly, and that's the most immediate solution that's in front of us, is reducing global emissions as fast as we can, but in parallel, helping to invest and scale in these types of removal solutions, so that come 2040, 2050, when we need that last gap, what's called unabatable emissions.
Right.
So the different types of emissions that we can't manage to get out of the economy.
Find and use the removal technique.
Exactly, that are able to balance those things
Right.
out. So both of those things need to happen in parallel, reducing as much as we can right now, but at the same time helping to grow and scale these removal technologies for the future.
Right. Makes sense.
When we live underwater, we need that kind of technology to
Exactly.
live underwater.
Which could be nice. It'll be the next podcast.
Okay, so I guess we covered quite a few pointers today, right? So in terms of the CIX tech, right, and why build the exchange, we covered that as well. So what do you think we can add on about I think in terms of scaling carbon market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last point that I'd make is really that it's growing and we're learning.
Yeah.
And carbon markets, really the history of it was that there was a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunity in the 2000s. And then for a variety of reasons, the activity slowed down through the 2010s.
Yeah.
And then come 2019, after the Paris Agreement, there's this great global recognition that we need to start addressing emissions and we need to start keeping global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
And so we're really 3 or 4 years into this new, a huge amount of excitement in the market, a huge amount of investment, a huge amount of opportunity. and we're getting better. So I think there's been a lot of criticism in the media and a lot of issues that are being raised.
Yes.
Some of these are valid, but they're not valid for every project. And I think what we really need to do is, as we think about how to grow the market, I think it's evident the opportunity and the solution this provides. But what we all need to do is come together and be constructive, and to help grow this and scale this in a constructive and productive way to really realize the opportunity that's in front of us. And all of these solutions, all of these opportunities, they all need money. And what the carbon market is able to do is bring them money. And for companies that are looking to participate in this, it provides the infrastructure for them to be able to do so in a verified and trusted way. But over time, as these market systems get better, the credits will get better. I think there'll be more verification. There'll be more opportunity to be sure that these credits represent real reductions and real removals, and there's positive impact for local communities and biodiversity. But it'll take time for these, but we're constantly getting better. We're in a place of constant improvement.
It's a long run kind of thing.
It's a long run, and I think what CIX is able to do, and why all of us are really excited to work at CIX, is to really be a part, really get into this journey early, and be a part of it, and be a hopefully relatively big part, but
it should be
a medium-sized part of helping to grow the market overall.
It's in line with the Singapore's goal of 2050 or 2030. They change it.
Exactly. So most countries have set a 2050 net zero target. Some countries have moved that forward, and then most corporate targets are also for 2050.
Right.
So that's 27 years. It's an awful long ways away.
It is.
But I think, like a lot of things, it's a bit like exam season where, it's far away. I don't need to worry about
before you know it.
Exactly. And so what all of us need to do is think about what we can do today to help realize those goals 27 years from now.
Right.
I mean, okay, so I think last but not least, right, because you mentioned that like you guys are hiring a lot of interns. So then these interns, they are completely new to like the industry, the working environment, in terms of like when you talk about the business aspect, right? They do not have experience in all these. Then how do people with experience, but not particularly in ESG or like sustainability, knowing any like standards like VERA standards, all that kind, how do they be a part of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a wide range of opportunities within ESG and sustainability. Carbon markets are just one of those, but it absolutely is growing, and it absolutely needs the skills that exist in many different industries to come to bear. So people that have marketing, finance, lots of different operations, lots of different types of skills that can help make a real positive difference. It's not just people that I'm not a sustainability expert. I'm not a forester.
Just passionate.
I'm just passionate and I can learn stuff. And so I think for anybody that's looking to have an impact, carbon markets can absolutely be a way to get the most out of the skills that they have and the experience that they have, but in a way that has a significant impact, but is also really, really cool, really, really fun.
It is.
And when will this exchange be launched?
Officially,
in the coming weeks.
Oh, in the coming week.
Yeah.
And what will this be on a website or like the company?
There'll be. I mean, hopefully you'll see it in the newspaper.
Newspaper. That's really, really big.
Yeah. So we're really, really excited. We've received an extremely positive response from market participants that are looking to be on the exchange, trade on the exchange. And so we're very, very excited to finally be able to launch it, because it's, as you can imagine, it's been a journey to both design how the exchange is supposed to work, and also to build and have the technology.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we're very excited to be able to play our role in scaling the carbon market.
I'm excited for that too. Looking forward to getting the direct link from you.
Yeah.
And okay, I guess hopefully if we have more topics that we can talk about after the exchanges, I think that will be an interesting topic to share with. I mean, I think everybody will be curious as to how you guys are doing. And in terms of like competition, I don't think there's a lot of carbon exchanges currently, but I believe that there will be more because this is it's looking like a more evergreen industry now compared to 10 years before. So definitely want to keep up with what's going on in the market. And then hopefully if there's anyone that is interested to be involved, they can reach out to you, they can reach out to me to get to you, or to have a collaboration and everything. I think, ultimately, this podcast should hopefully help someone to understand whether on how they can join the industry, and if they're passionate, just, take the step.
The leap of faith.
Definitely. It's going to take all of us to make a difference, and we're very excited to partner with anybody and work with anybody for our shared goal of meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement.
Yes.
That's what I love about the industry. It's a competition a little bit, but then ultimately the target is still the same. The end goal for everyone would be the same.
Absolutely.
And that's the best part. Yeah. So thank you for taking the time on joining our podcast. I look forward to speaking with you, and hopefully there will be more of this green transition that we can talk about and share with our audience.
Absolutely.
And make a change.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, Bryan. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and stay tuned for more. And should there be should there be more questions that you have, feel free to reach out to Bryan or myself. Thank you.